Thanks, Balaji. Now I'm getting hungry and I'm looking forward to all the spices. Thank you for inviting us. Guys, you did a great job, the evil guys. It's great being here, and I also want to thank the kind of Hive guys and our supporters. We even come from Indonesia, and we brought a bunch of colleagues and customers from Europe, so it's quite a far away trip. Now I want to share some insights from, let's say, a practitioner perspective, but also from an academic. So I'm called of a kind of an bracademic. And to give you some insights, what's the kind of highlight and learning from the last couple years. Actually, we go into, okay, it's on, it should work. Can I get some help here?
Yeah, it should.
Yes. Oh. Okay. Okay. So sorry, and thanks for the crowd collaboration here. So, what is the kind of things I would like to share with you? Unfortunately, the slides are somehow correct, but there is different kinds of innovation, and based on the type of innovations, there are different formats how to solve, let's say, the challenges. And if there are kind of, let's say, continuous improvements, there is some classical innovation management, and there is the kind of open innovation approach, and there is some incubation and acceleration. And nowadays, if you talk about the innovation game, it's about all this kind of different approaches, and probably you won't crowdsource anything if it's in your core business, in your core innovation teams. You know what to do, but if it's outside and if the uncertainty gets bigger, then you may rely not only on, let's say, the typical suspects, but you want to crowdsource something. And if we think about crowdsourcing, it could be some internal and external kind of crowdsourcing. And probably if it's closer to your core business and it's not as radical, you may try it internally. But if it's really new and you don't have any clue, you do not even have the capabilities, you may go to the external crowd. But the crowd, as we heard and learned today, it's a fuzzy thing. Who is the crowd and what kind of capabilities and skills are we looking for? So let's go a bit deeper into the crowd. What kind of crowd do you want to interact with? And by the way, open innovation for me is just the kind of culture and idea of opening up co-creation. It's always co-creation if you do it together with the company and the crowd, because you co-create something together. And crowdsourcing is just a methodology or a tool which enriches your innovation, let's say, toolkit and box. So, of course, you can crowdsource different activities, and it should be always goal-oriented. You, as a company, as a practitioner, you have to achieve a certain goal. You want to generate ideas, you want to solve certain problems, you want to come up with concepts or designs or algorithms, and depending on what kind of goals you want to achieve, companies are using different platforms, and they may do just a contest, or they may do an ongoing co-creation platform. They may do it internally or externally. And of course, it's all crowdsourcing, but once you design those, let's say, platforms or crowdsourcing mechanisms, they work quite different. And I give you some examples on why Siemens is doing it or did it, and what are the learnings about it. So they do internal crowdsourcing and also external crowdsourcing. They do communities, they do contests, etc. And I had the pleasure to do this work together with Karim and Katja, who's sitting over there. So it's not only my, let's say, work and achievement. So one thing is Siemens, for example, they use different tools to improve their innovation and to come up with groundbreaking ideas and solutions at the end. And for example, this was the map of tools and also practices they already used, and then they said, oh, but we do have some additional, let's say, opportunities to use crowdsourcing and contests in particular. So for example, we could improve our idea generation, we could try to scout additional technologies, or we sometimes need some feedback from some expert networks in order to improve the technology, in order to come up with bigger ideas or with more integrated ideas. And of course, as we also learned, they used, let's say, different technology providers or platform providers. And we as Hive are also kind of platform agnostic, because even if we run our own platform and crowd, sometimes you need a special crowd. You need a specialized crowd, okay, specialized in technology, scouting or problem solving, in algorithms, in designs, etc. Is it internal or external one? And here you see that, of course, this kind of contests may try to tackle different problems and activities, and based, you have to have different, let's say, experiences, different mechanisms, different incentives, and you see just a list of different projects Siemens has done internally. Those examples have been, let's say, set up in collaboration with us. It was kind of technology scouting. It may be to solve a certain problem or to get a lot of ideas, for example, when technologies are changing, and how to get them together. So from a research we did a couple of years ago, the main reasons why companies are doing it, at least when they collaborate with consumers and customers, it's about, oh, we want to reduce the risks, we want to reduce the uncertainty, we want to identify what are really the needs. So it may not be the single solution or the single idea, but it gives you an overall understanding, and it gives you a broader decision basis, because it's not just idea generation, it's also selection. But there are also certain, let's say, concerns. Companies dislike using crowdsourcing or co-creation because they are, let's say, they fear a lack of secrecy, an intellectual property dispute, and there are a lot of reasons why they hesitate not doing it. For example, it may be also disturb the internal processes, everything is so smooth. And in addition, if you think about collaborating with the crowd, whom do you want to interact with? And there are different kind of skills. Do you need technical expertise? And the technical expertise, it may look different than, for example, I just want to get customer and consumer feedback. And depending on what you're looking for, there are different kind of crowds, there are different mechanisms they should consider. And so it becomes more and more complex when doing this. What we learned today is that there are different, let's say, kind of participants, depending on their characteristics, depending on their expertise, they may have different expectations. And for example, when we did this research here, we found that 27% do it for the curiosity, 19 or 20% are more reward-oriented guys, and about 26% are doing it for the kind of intrinsic interest. But depending on what kind of crowd, you may, let's say, enforce certain characteristics of the platform, and here it also matches with the kind of different motives, right? So here are some generic design principles, but it's not so easy if you as a company try to interact with the right crowd, and if you, let's say, decide with what kind of crowd you want to interact, you may have a different kind of design of those platforms. Finally, nowadays we are running to a stage where it's not so well organized anymore, because you work with different partners. It's not just you as a company, you interact with one crowd. So it's more kind of dissolving, and we're running in this kind of innovation ecosystem era where this kind of processes of stage gate may not longer work, or they may just be more, let's say, dynamic and agile. And so what we try to do with crowdsourcing is that we really empower teams, core teams, which have a clear mission to innovate and come up with a result, with some outputs, and they interact with the different players. Sometimes they even interact with competitors. It may be the consumers, it may be startups. So the crowd definition, it's really getting more complex because it's more and more players. So, no, the other way. Last slide. Many problems nowadays, it's not the generation of ideas. It's not activating the crowd, it's getting output. And the output is very difficult to achieve because we have huge amounts of data and to select the right ones. And so one of the problems is that we have too much information. And one of the problems of artificial intelligence, for example, that you have too little data. So one of the, let's say, latest thoughts is that you combine artificial intelligence with crowdsourcing to create a win-win solution. Thanks.